Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Raymond's title got me thinking about my own journey in terms of evolution, and some thoughts on how that can shape the next few steps in our evolution. So looking back at my own story and a couple of things that I think we need to look at, and I'm going to borrow a phrase that Kingsley used recently on, I think I heard it on TV, where he said that life's a game of inches, as it surely is. So I want to look at a couple of inches that I think that we can nudge along, and I'm going to use my story to put a frame around that. And actually, one of them was the point he brought up earlier about the Coder Dojo. So don't let me forget about that. There's been some talk here about government agencies and FDI and so on, and that's kind of appropriate because my own path ticks a lot of those government agencies boxes. Now, I'm a graduate of UL, University of Limerick, in 1985, and I'm a graduate of the internship or co-op program that came out of there. And I did the maths degree, and for me, it was all coding for me. And UL were one of the very first universities, or I don't think they were actually called a university then, that had a co-op program, and it was kind of looked down upon by some of the other institutions. And I think the 100% placement rate from UL kind of vindicated MLIS's vision there, and pretty much since, a lot of the other universities now have that program in place. So being a child, as it were, or a product of that system, got me an internship with Analog Devices in Limerick, a Boston-based firm in Limerick, and Atari. And when I got into Atari, we started working on these little microcomputers, and but then I saw this big IBM machine, and I went to the DP manager then, that's what we used to call them then, and I said, I want to code on that thing there. And so he gave me a break, and basically that kind of locked me into that process for 20 years. And this is actually where my position on FDI is reversed, because prior to this, FDI wasn't relevant to me as an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, I couldn't give a hoot about jobs. To me, it's all about product. And whereas Shannon development and idea, we're always talking about creating jobs and so on. That wasn't relevant. But now I'm actually going to take that back, because had those US firms not been there, I wouldn't have had that internship, and I wouldn't have gotten that start. And I would, my path would have been a different one. It could have been the same one. I don't know. So my wish in terms of working with a software firm was answered by a Computer World ad by a US firm called Software 2000, and answered that, and that got me into a relationship with Cape Cod in the US for the longest time. And it was a great company to work for. They were considered the best in terms of an accounting platform. They had a crack sales force, and I learned a lot there too, in terms of Irish tech firms and selling. And that we have a lot of very good technical people who were very poor at selling and were very poor at marketing. This firm in particular had crack sales teams from companies like McCormick and Dodge and MSA, and taught me that, and that is still very relevant, and I think that's another inch that could do with a big nudge here in terms of helping tech firms get to grips with marketing, get to grips with selling, and get the product out there. And this also brings me to another very, very relevant point in terms of immigration, right? For me, just pause this for a second. For me, going to the US was just pursuing my dream. It was nothing to do with immigration. Of course, I understand that there is something called forced immigration. That's something completely different. But for me, work anywhere. and the world was my oyster. And, and I think that's the message that we should be sending. So what if you have to go to Australia and code there, or go to anywhere else? Go do it and get to work. And I had always thought that I was, a lone voice in that, but I have seen that there are others who talk about that, but there is too much emphasis on the negative side of that. I mean, there's a almost daily whine fest coming out of the Irish Times Generation Immigration blog, going on about how bad this is, and to me it isn't. It's opportunity of a lifetime for many people, and it's something to be celebrated, and perhaps again, going back to that inch metaphor, that's an inch that we should nudge and maybe change in terms of how we look at that. So in the late 80s, there was a big shortage of programmers in Ireland. So I came back here to set up an R&D operation for the company, and we got to employ about 60 programming and engineering people here, and that was great for a while. So I think again we kind of ticked a box there in terms of what I talked about earlier in terms of the government agencies, that there was Irish graduate going abroad, bringing jobs back. That was all great. So in '92 we decided to go out on our own, and we created a company called Software Architects. It was a cash book product, and we looked at plugging a gap in larger software companies' accounting packages, and we developed that. We developed that product over the years, and it was very successful. We partnered with US firms, a US firm called SSE, and they white labeled the product, or OEM'd it, whatever you want to call it, and so it was very, very successful. Now, when we started that business, it was 1992, and I've been told we were in the teeth of a recession at the time, and it was oblivious to me. And what I would say to anyone now is that this is a great time to start a business. So Edwina's cookery school down the road is a fantastic time for her to be starting her business in doing that. So we developed that product, and in '98 we thought the Americans were ready for electronic payments. They weren't. They are now. So we got our timing wrong there, I guess. And we brought our operation over to a lovely town called Mill Valley in San Francisco, a wonderful place. And that was around the dot-com boom. And we were being courted by firms like Ariba, Commerce One, Claris, and the company eventually got acquired for $60 million, which was, I guess, a great result for an Irish software company. So that is the story that I have, and I think there were, in terms of evolution and things that I can learn personally from that, and in terms of thinking about what's next. We talked about the Coder Dojo thing. I mean, I think that is critical. People are always talking about, oh, I want to be the next Silicon Valley or whatever. Well, in Atlanta, they also want to be Silicon Valley as well. And I would say, forget about that. For me, the future is age 9. So get the 9-year-olds coding now. And you talked about that earlier. So there's a big inch that we should be nudging, is that in every town there should be a Coder Dojo. In every town, every village, we should be encouraging the 9-year-olds to code, and actually cook as well, probably. I think that's a great idea. And so that's the big one that I would say. And the final thing that I would bring here, thinking about Raymond's topic, of a delusional is, and I think you referred to it as well, Nicola, in terms of the gudgery and that kind of thing. And I was trying to think of a word that meant the opposite of Schadenfreude. And actually, I've been thinking about that for a while, and I didn't use the obvious of the internet, but I happened to bump into an old retired New York journalist, and we actually got talking about wordsmithing and so on. And so I said, well, given that you're so good at this, what do you think is the opposite for Schadenfreude, which we know means, delight in other people's misfortune? And he said, actually, there was a Buddhist term called mudita. And mudita is a delight in other people's good fortune. And I thought, for this session, that was a great thing, that maybe that if we can provide more mudita to others, then it's all good. So that's all I have.